Well, hey guys, so excited to be here and to be starting a new book today. I don't know about you guys, but it's always fun to have something different sitting on your bookshelf or on your nightstand or wherever it is that you keep it. And it's funny because someone in our group commented on the cover of this book. She's like, that's a really boring cover. And I was like, gosh, I never even noticed it. And then I thought about what the whole concept behind the book is it's not to be all distracting and flashy and in your face and draw attention, but to really just help us to create this sense of peace and calm and maybe even stillness. So I think there was probably some intention as to how they did it and why they did it that way. And it's really what's in between the covers that matters anyway, right? So can you hear me okay? It was trying to connect to my phone audio. Okay, so I'm just making sure that it's not still doing that. Let's pray, because I feel today it's blustery here in Southern Illinois. So both Shane and I are in Southern Illinois, and it literally sounds like, the Wizard of Oz could be coming to join us at any point. So, but sometimes we feel like that on the inside, right? We feel like everything is just always blowing around, and that can kind of blow us in. And then, sometimes we don't get as much out of something. Hey, Kristen, welcome. Glad that you're here. I'm going to switch over to gallery so I can see more people. There we go. Oh yeah, my hair really is windblown from being out in the grill. Oh, well, you guys get what you get, right? Yeah. All right. Yep. Well, let's pray. Lord, we just stop and pause and just thank you for being the God who wants to know us, who wants to do life with us, who's invited us to do life with you. God, I thank you that your heart is not for us to live busy, hurried, chaotic, scattered, blown here and there by the wind kind of lives, but to really just have that peace that can only come from you, even in the midst of all the things that are going on around us. And so as we start this book study, God, I just pray that you would just prepare our hearts. I pray that you would quiet our minds from maybe all the other things that have been blowing us around in our day and week. I pray that you would just show us your truth, show us what you want us to hear, and then by your Spirit, give us the ability to apply it and to live it out and to see the difference that this makes. So I thank you for each woman who's here live. I thank you for each one who's watching the replay. I thank you for just putting this book on the heart of John Mark Comer, and for the many, many people who have read this book that it's been impactful for. And we just expect that you're going to do great things through this as we ruthlessly eliminate hurry. So thank you, Lord, for that, and bless our conversation, our time today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And I open my eyes and Kristen is there. That's like a fun surprise, right? Yeah. I was just sharing your story, Kristen, about how what your comment was about the cover being really boring and, kind of maybe the purpose behind it, because we're trying to, kind of take things down to that, that base level and things like that. So I want to start off before we go into the book stuff, reading a passage that we're going to keep coming back to in this book that I think really maybe resonates with what we want, but maybe not what we're experiencing right now. And it's from Matthew 11:28-30. And it says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Is that how life feels these days in this chaos of the modern world, as he describes it on the front? What are you guys sensing in the world around us? Are you sensing that gentleness and that rest and that light burden, or are you sensing something opposite? Am I freezing? Hold on, it disconnected from my phone. Hold on a second.
You're cutting in and out. Yeah.
Okay. Give me a second. It disconnected from my phone Wi-Fi. I thought it was just trying to disconnect from. So hang on a second. Okay. Okay, it may take a second to catch back up again. So as soon as I see you guys moving, then let me know when you can hear me. Can you hear me yet? Yes, sorry to those of you guys who are watching the recording. You could just skip ahead a few seconds and then hopefully we'll have this figured out. Okay, I think we're back. I see you guys moving your eyes. Okay, I'm on my phone connection now, so that should be better than the outside connection happening. So my question, I don't know if you guys heard it, was, do you feel in yourself and in the world around us, like people are at peace and rest, and we have these light burdens and things like that? Or do you sense the opposite? Or do you see and feel a little bit of both? Like, let's just kind of see kind of where are we coming from as we're coming into this study.
I would see more hurry.
Mm.
That's living in North America, right? Like I live in Toronto, which is a very busy city, and everybody's going all the time, right? So, and it makes people sicker.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. It's crazy what it does to us, not just mentally, but also physically. Kristen's a health coach and really passionate about helping people, make healthy choices. And this is just adding to all the issues that we have. And we wonder why. Why does this, why are we suddenly having so many more issues and diseases and syndromes and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Shayna, what are you feeling or seeing?
So, for me personally, definitely much slower than I was a couple years ago, because it's just where God has taken me and has helped me. But I can definitely see, like when he was listing the seven or what things that you these things. Like I could have 2 years ago been like, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And I was actually at the end of it, I was like, well, I'm not that many of these. That's not bad compared to where most are. But everybody else around me is still there. My husbands are there, and my kids, they're teenagers. So you see this in their life. And so a lot of this, like, yes, God is teaching me, but I'm also seeing it like I need to start being a little bit more of an example, even more so, especially to my kids, as they start going into adulthood. So
Yeah. It's so interesting you bring that up because I have this plaque on my kitchen counter. Of course, I look at it every day. I'm not going to be able to quote it perfectly, but it's like peace. Basically, it's the whole idea that peace is what's going on inside you, even when there's like a bunch of chaos around you. It's some version of that, right? And even as I'm sitting here and hearing this like crazy wind outside, right? Like in my home, I'm at peace, right? And what I hear you saying, and I know you're working towards this, Kristen, is like in our heart and in our spirit, we can be at peace, and the whole world can be spinning like a tornado around us. And what's cool, number one, is we can still be at peace regardless of what everybody out here is doing, right? So I love that, right? And we can truly do that when we've got the help of the Holy Spirit, right? Because this is something that goes against our natural bent. It goes against just kind of what we would probably tend to do. But then we also have to be careful, because if it's happening around us, I think we need to keep ourselves in check, right? Do you ever find that like you're kind of a quiet place, and all of a sudden someone comes in the room or comes in the house or comes in the office or whatever, and they're way up here, and all of a sudden everybody's feeling way up here, and you're like, whoa, let's like bring it down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Shane, I
Yeah,
think
for
you
sure.
had a great point of like, we can be, instead of letting them bring us back up to a level we don't want to be, what if we were the people that kind of started bringing other people down? Like what if when you walked in the room, people were like, ah, I just feel like I can rest. I feel lighter.
Yeah.
Right? Like that would just
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing. Yeah. And yet so many people, like, we don't have that because we keep rushing around and doing and filling this void, that's in our hearts. So kind of what we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of like section by section and kind of talk about what things stood out to us. I really want to make this not just regurgitating what he said, but also really applying it to our lives, right? Because this is a very practical book. So if you guys haven't heard the story, and I'll share this real quickly for those people who haven't heard it before. My dad sent me this book a little over a year ago. And after he sent it, he's like, I hope I didn't offend you. Because he's like, well, gosh, I don't want her to think like I'm saying she's busy and she's always in a hurry and whatever. And yet it was exactly what I needed. And I was like you, Shayna, like I had really been seeing a lot of growth and a lot of like things moving in the direction that I wanted them to go. But yet this book really showed me like I still had a lot of other areas that I wanted to just, kind of bring it down even more and to go even deeper with the Lord in this area. And so it's been really transformative for me over the past year. because it gives you a lot of good knowledge, right? And then it also gives you a lot of good application and kind of a, what does God say about this? Which I love when whenever we can marry those two things together, right? So,
Yeah.
so in the beginning, he's talking about just kind of how he feels, I don't know if you guys could relate to anything. I just jotted down a few that stood out to me that I know I've been able to relate to in the past, not as much right now in this very moment as I, would have a couple years ago, but feeling flat and one-dimensional. Have you ever felt like that? Like, I remember being at a place where like I literally was like showing up in body, but not there. Like my head was not there, my heart was not there, my body was there, and it was just like, what's the next place I have to be? What's the next thing I have to do? Okay, I'm here, but not really. Feeling like his soul was hollow. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, my body is here, but my soul is not really full. What about this one? There's still not enough time to get it all done. Have you ever felt that way? I mean, let's be honest. I think we feel this probably almost on the daily.
All the time. All the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Or just feeling hurried. This other one really hit me. So busy with life that I'm missing out in the moment. Like I look back at like when my kids were younger and I was in survival mode for a period just because my husband was deployed. So I was solo parenting and there were some other things going on that, I was responsible for. And yeah, I thought the answer was just to work harder and do more. And I feel like I missed out on a lot of those things. What about this one? Who am I becoming? You guys ever stopped? Have you ever had a moment, like a time in your life, or was there like kind of a pivot point for you where you kind of just went, why am I in such a hurry? He said, to become somebody I don't even like. Who am I even becoming? You guys ever gotten to that point or had those moments when you kind of like looked yourself in the mirror? For me, it was turning 40. It was just like that, like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Who am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? Yeah, because we just get on the rat race, right? Get on the hamster wheel and just keep going, going, and going again. And then he starts transitioning into my dream is to slow down, to simplify my life around abiding, right? Really abiding, becoming like Jesus, feeling God again, feeling my own soul again, and no longer being weary, burdened, bone tired. And so, yeah, I just thought before we go on to kind of talking about the problem, like, are there any pieces of that really like you resonate with? Just in like maybe how you felt in the past, even things that kind of still pop up now or that you struggle with, or you have to be really intentional about, this is something that kind of pops up for you.
So when you mentioned about the turning 40, age isn't a thing for me. So I just turned 48 in November. So 50 is in less than 2 years. And I thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, like I never thought I would be where I am. This is not a good thing. I mean, it's not bad, but I thought I would be further ahead than I am. And so I said to my husband this morning, I was in the sauna and he was working out, and I said, you know what, we need to do, because I was reading this in the sauna and I was saying whatever, I have highlighted stuff there. I can't remember what it is at the moment, but I was basically saying that what we've been doing up until now, it's not a bad thing, but we have to do something different if we want a different result. So, I mean, he's 53. So I'm thinking like all of it just keeps coming. And so, and I know that God can change things like this. And I know that, he's the restorer of time, right? He gives back 1,000-fold, but it's just, again, slowing down and recognizing where it's always seemed for me that I was always chasing, financially, I was chasing the next thing because it was a need. But then that actually realizing that actually was an idol, that became an idol is, you know what I mean? God has put me in this profession of nutrition and, health and this is my ministry. However, it has become, and even though because everything was for God, but it was still an idol because everything was, I have to keep doing this, keep doing. So, yeah. So anyways, it's all good. I believe that my latter years will be greater than my former years, and I have not entered my latter years yet. So they will be greater than my former years. And so I'm standing on that. I'm standing on that. And he's faithful, and I know he'll return back everything
Yeah.
that has been stolen. And even the stupid things and the mistakes I've done. So
Sure.
yeah.
Well, the passage that's coming to mind is like, I'll restore the years the locusts have eaten, right? Like that's right there at the end of the Old Testament when he's like promising them. And then he goes radio silent for 400 years. So you got to imagine what the Jewish people were thinking at that point. They're like, wait, I thought you were giving us all this stuff back. I thought you were coming to save us. I thought you were like, and yet what did he want them to do? He wanted them just to wait, you know, and
Yes.
said,
It's so
know that I can pour out this, you know, pour out the blessings from the storehouses of heaven, like in a moment. But the problem is when we don't stop and wait on him and look to him, and we're too busy doing all our own stuff, we're in oblivion, you know, and he's just like, hello, right here.
Yeah.
This year has been a lot of, and it was all started by this book. This year has been a lot of unplugging for me, and it's been so transformative in so every area of my life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, especially spiritually. But you know, of just disconnecting from the world, disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from the hustle. Like I feeling like I always have to, you know, hit a certain number, do certain things, or you know, whatever. And it's really been just so interesting to see how the less I do and the more I let God, the more has come, right? And then, you know, just like you said, like sometimes we're busy doing our ministry thinking we're doing this for God, but really it's just us doing it in our own strength, which means, yeah, it's not really for him. And then we're just exhausted and tired and burned out and wondering why it's not working and why is this not happening? And I thought you were going to do this. And yeah, God's had to like get my attention a couple times over the past year and just be like, are you ready to stop and listen? Are you just ready to stop? Are you done? Are you done? And then finally I was like, I give, right? Like, I don't want this anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything on your heart or mind, Shayna, before we crack this open?
No.
Let's start on page 18. This is they're not really chapters, they're like sections, right? So we're in part 1 called the problem. So I want you to know that we're going to talk a lot about problems today, but we're not going to like, you know, there is hope. Right? So if you're listening to this and you haven't, you know, perused the rest of the chapters, you're like, what? Man, we're like miserable. No, it's really not going to be that bad. But so this is a section called Hurry, the Great Enemy of the Spiritual Life. And on page 18, he asks a mentor of his, what do I need to do to become the me I want to be? I wonder how, like, I mean, you can look on the next page and see what answer his mentor gave, right? But like, what types of answers do we typically get when we ask that question? What do I need to do to become the me I want to be?
Well, in my industry, it's a lot of new age stuff.
Okay, explain that a little bit.
So it's just more about it. It's just all about me. Like, what can I do? Right. Like, to be more me would be do more self-care, you know, do more meditation, right? Like do more everything that's not of God. But yeah, that's typically what I hear. I don't follow that, but that's what I hear a lot of. Yeah.
And there's a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you hear, Shayna?
Say the question again.
So the question that he asked his mentor was, what do I need to do to become the me I want to be? So before we look at his mentor's answer, just kind of what kind of answer do you typically hear to that or think that you'd hear if you're asking that?
Well, definitely, I agree with what Kristen said, just more focusing on yourself. And yeah, and what can you do to improve yourself?
Yeah.
Being quiet and still and listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like at the same time, it's also a do more, right? Well, it's a numbers game. Just do more. Just, you know, like how many times have you heard that, right? Or just, well, you got to do one more social media app, or you got to do one more, whatever it is, and have one more employee or what, you know, like, and so it's like, yeah, like do more of this stuff, but also like keep going.
I think both of them are being said, but just like everything in our life, we choose what we want to hear. And so at points in my life, that's what I've heard is one more, I've got to do. And then now is, you know, I'm listening to the other side of you, just focus on you and what do you need to do for you? And And I agree with Kristen, a lot of the ideas are more new age for sure, but it's about, there's good and there's bad, and taking it and putting it in with scripture and making sure that it's the right
Yeah.
pathway.
Yeah. And where is it leading us to, right? Is it, if it's just leading us to self, right? And that's where it ends. Yeah. Then that too is going to, pass. It's not going to last. But when it's leading us to the Lord, right? He's the source, he's the purpose, he's the reason. And it's to build the things that are going to last longer than us, right? The things that are going to go on into eternity, well beyond when my physical body, is done. That's what makes it different. And so I love that his mentor, first of all, was silent for a long time, which is indicative of what he's about to say. And then he said, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And he goes, can we just hit stop for a minute and agree? That's brilliant. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. So when you hear that, like, how does that resonate with you? What do you hear? Maybe is there a word in there that really stands out to you? Like, let's just kind of talk about that piece of advice he got that he's sharing with us.
Slow down. I hear slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Stop adding everything on, because I think actually what this just came is everything is, I think probably people are busy, always doing, because there's probably a lot of hurt and lack of really the savior, right? A lack of what we're truly looking for as humans, and that's him. But we're looking to find that peace in doing more and going and having the bigger house and having the vacations and then having the kids and all the activities and just adding on. Not that any of that's bad, but again, it's slowing down and not having to add on, so that
Not getting sucked into the everyday busyness, which is easy to do.
And find our significance in that, right? Let's be honest, ladies. As women, I think we feel like the more plates I can spin, the more hats I can wear, the more valuable I am, check out my Shira, and I think the world just keeps feeding into that. There are two words that really stand out to me in this phrase. The first one is eliminate. It's not like reorganize it, right? It's not like, oh, let's time block your hurry. It's not like, let's make it look pretty. It's like, get rid of it, eliminate, like gone, right? The other word that stands out is ruthlessly. Like, this is not I'm just kind of dancing around the issue here. Like, this is going to be like I am really making a stand, and I'm going to do some things that are maybe look and feel to myself, maybe to other people, especially, as a little ruthless. Because what happens if we don't eliminate our hurry? And what happens if we're not ruthless about this process? Like, let's kind of scenario out, like, if we're not eliminating, what would happen? If we're not ruthless about our elimination of it, what do you think would happen?
We get sucked back in.
We find ourselves in that circle of just spinning and spinning and never feeling accomplished, never feeling that peace, that love, that a sense of accomplishment that we are actually wanting in our life.
Yeah, because you get there and it's not what you thought it was, right? And then there's the next peak that you're like, oh, well, maybe it's this. And so it's that false summit, maybe, that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And most people aren't willing to put in the work to ruthlessly eliminate, right? Like, this does take work. It's not an easy process, but it's simple, but it's not easy, right? But the results are the easy life. And I say that in air quotes because we're not looking for easy life as in, I'm just going to sit back on the couch and binge Netflix, right? But the easy life that Jesus promised, right? Where your burden is easy, right? Where you're not carrying all this stuff and always on the go and things like that. Really resonated with me on page 20. He quotes Corrie ten Boom, and it made me think of Screw Tape Letters, which I've referred to in a couple of podcast episodes recently. So here's what Corrie said, and then I'll tell you how it came out in the podcast. But Corrie ten Boom once said, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Ah, wow, right? Like, if you've ever read the Screw Tape Letters, it's this more advanced demon that's training his young protege, who's his nephew, right? And so, get your guy distracted, keep him distracted, right? And then I just shared a story in one that just came out recently where there's this story about these 3 different demons, and they're trying to figure out how do we like keep people from going towards God. And so one of them says, let's just tell people there's no, I think he started with no heaven. And then he's like, no, but they already know there's a heaven. They know it's all over the Bible or whatever. They're not going to believe that. The next guy says, let's tell them there's no hell. And he's like, no, Jesus talked more about hell than he talked about heaven. Like they know, like because of sin, that something has to happen and, whatever. And the last one goes, let's just make them think they're not in a hurry. Like, and like, that's the one that Satan was like, yep, go do it. Right. Like, so that's a different kind of hurry. That's like, we should be in an eternal hurry, right? Where we're thinking and preparing and awaiting that day. And so yet the way he keeps us from being in a hurry about that is to keep us hurried in the everyday, right? Like in the now and the now part. And here's what I love. It goes on to say in that paragraph, there's truth in what Corrie ten Boom said. Both sin and busyness have the same effect. That was like a knife to me. I was like, oh, here's the effect. They cut off your connection to God, to other people, and even to your own soul. Wow. What are your thoughts on the effect of sin and hurry?
I wouldn't say that I had ever really thought of it as a sin, but it does make sense for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then busyness, if we're constantly busy, not having the time to be in God's word, and that's one of the places he speaks to us, then we may not be hearing what he's saying and how he's directing us, which then can lead us into sin, because now when we're disobedient, that's sin, right? So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's just the way he says it is like very interesting.
Never thought of putting those 2 things in the same room,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Have you guys read the book, or there's a study with it too, called Respectable Sins by Jerry Bridges? Okay, you want to like have a whole new view on sin. In fact, I pulled it out the other day because I referenced it in a podcast episode coming up, and I think I might need to reread it again. But we have these sins that are like, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal. Like we know like the bad stuff, right? Like, yeah, of course we don't go there. But then there are these sins that like we just say, oh, that's just my personality, or oh, that's just how I am, or whatever. Like, so for example, one of them was prayerlessness. Like me not praying is not obeying the command to pray. So what, like exactly what you were just saying, Kristen. So then therefore, if I'm not doing what God is telling me to do, that is a sin, right? And not in a shame on you, like I have to check a box, right, to make God happy. It's not that, but it's that connection with him, right? And so he has a list of, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 respectable sins that if you look at the list, you're kind of like, oh gosh, I never would have thought about that being a sin, right? Because it's really, because we have the sins of commission, which means you're committing the sin. Then we have the sins of omission, right? The things that you're just omitting that he's already said to do. So it's just, yeah, a whole different way, right, of looking at that and figuring that out. So the number one problem you will face is time. People are just too busy to live emotionally healthy and spiritually rich and vibrant lives. How many people, I love this on page 21. What do people normally answer when you ask the customary, how are you? What do you typically hear?
Yeah.
Good.
Everyone's busy.
Good.
I'm busy.
Yeah. Why do you think I don't know, like, do you think people mean that in a positive way? Do you think they don't really know exactly what that means? Like,
I think that we've been conditioned to think that it's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. A badge of honor.
Yeah. Like, look at me, I'm busy. I must be important because I've got all kinds of stuff to do versus somebody who sits around all day and doesn't do anything.
Well, like I even did it this week, and someone said, it's been a long time. What have you been up to? And I'm like, same, just work, sleep, work, go to church, go back to work. But
yeah.
Like not really truly thinking, when the chapter that he hits all the where we've come from, like it was a really eye opener.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
What's his name? The guy that he's a money guy. I see his face. I always forget his name. David,
Now I'm gonna blank because you're asking. Hold on.
You know who I'm talking about. David, oh my gosh. And his daughter is also in
Yes.
Rachel Cruze's daughter. And he's the money guy. He's the one that talks about getting it and all that. You guys know who it is.
Dave
Anyways,
Ramsey. Dave Ramsey.
Dave,
I'm like,
so
it's-
I says, and my husband actually adopted this, is he says, when people ask him how he's doing, and you hear him say this on the podcast, he says, better than I deserve, meaning that he's better than he deserves because of what Jesus has done for him. So he says that people will many times ask him, what do you mean better than you deserve? And then he actually shares what that actually means. So he said, I love that. So, because most people, say like Shana said, they say, oh, I'm good. But I hear a lot of people, they'll say good, but really busy. And I always want to say, like, is busy a good thing? Like, do you like being busy? Or I just feel like people are, it's like a badge of honor almost.
Yeah. And look at right there. I mean, what an opportunity Dave has created to be able to share the truth and to share like that life can be different than just the typical, oh, good, or life is busy. Because I think it's really about what you're busy about, right? And I think he even talks about this at the bottom of 21. Yeah. Is that there's a healthy kind of busyness where life is full of the things that matter, not wasted on empty leisure or trivial pursuits. By that definition, Jesus himself was busy, right? Jesus didn't just sit around. Like when he was on earth, he was moving. You know, he would get up early before the sun rose to spend time with his father. It wasn't like he was sleeping in and then I'm gonna have my coffee and now I'm gonna read my Torah and then I'm gonna he had a lot of stuff he was doing. It says the problem isn't when you have a lot to do, it's when you have too much to do. And the only way to keep the quota up is to hurry. And I'll sometimes, I mean, like right now, honestly, between now and April 15th is like breakneck speed. And I look at all the things that the next 2 months are going to hold. And I'm like, Lord, I don't even know how we're going to do this. I mean, it involves going on 3 trips, one of them to the other side of the world. Speaking, I'm doing 3 one-day seminars that I'm teaching, plus launching this new program that's coming out, plus just all the, day-to-day stuff or whatever. And so, I've had people say to me like, wow, you're really busy. And I'm like, no, my life is just really full of good things that God's calling me to do, I think there's a difference, right? And it's really a mindset, and I wouldn't feel right if I was just sitting on the couch, 8 hours a day, not doing anything. So it's okay to be doing, right? But I think it's that right mindset. And it really comes back to, and I keep coming back to this in my own life, and he brought it out too, that what are the 2 greatest commandments? Love the Lord your God with everything and love others as yourself, right? And he talks at the bottom of page 22, he said, what's the highest value in Christ's kingdom? Easy, love, right? Like if the things we are doing are about us loving God more and loving others more, now you still have to check your heart and attitude that you're not checking off boxes or trying to people please or God please, right? And not just filling space to try to find your value in it. But like if those are the things that we're about, like that's investing in the kingdom, right? That's investing in where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the bad kind of busy that is the problem, right? Which is what we see, around us and all that. So yeah. So on page 24.
Yeah, like I think about my pastor, think about how he's retired now, but not retired from pastoring, but retired from what God had him do when he was even pastoring. And now that he just pastors, like he's very busy, or I like to say productive busy, because he goes on mission trips and he's speaking here and there. And, he's pastoring 3 churches. Like he's busy, but it's what God has called him to do. So yeah, it's very different. God has called us to work, right? He didn't call us to just do nothing. He's called us to work. So yeah, it's making sure a healthy view of the busy that we're doing and making sure it's not for ourselves, but it's for him. Right.
Yeah. Shana was a part of the book study that we did before called On the One Thing by Gary Keller, which is a great book. And one of the things we talked about was because he talks in there a lot about productivity, right? And productivity is great as long as it's defined in the right way. And I said, I want to define it as, I want to call it purposivity, right? I don't just want to be productive just to be checking off boxes and just to be getting stuff done. I want to be purposeful, right? And so like you're talking about a good kind of productivity that's working towards a bigger purpose that's, doing that. And even still, we have to always keep things in check, right? Because we can still get busy even about doing the Lord's work, and things like that. So I love how he also points out on 24, like love, joy, and peace, right? We hear those all the time in the Bible, right? And those are incompatible with hurry, right? But the more present we are to the now, the more joy we tap into, the more peace that we, experience, the more love that we're going to be able to share because of all that. So the problem is we just kind of accepted this as normal, right? Like this is just how life is, busy, busy, busy. And I sometimes I wonder, like, what's it going to be like for our kids and our grandkids and our great grandkids, right? If Jesus doesn't come back by then, like, can it really get busier? Can it really be that there's just more and more and more, happening and coming in, and, so many things, right?
Yeah.
And so I love how he ends that section. He says, he talks about Martha, and we talked about this in the One Thing study. He said to Martha, "You're worried and upset about many things," right? Here's the thing. We have a lot of things in life that we could be worried and upset about, and Martha did too, but she didn't have an internet that was feeding her information on all the things that everybody else in the world was worried and upset about, right? Like, it's the same thing, but we, it's almost like the access to more information is a curse as well, because now, we can get worried and upset about a lot of things, right? But few things are needed. Need only one, right? And he is saying the need of the hour is to slow down spiritually. So any other thoughts or anything from that first chapter or section there before we look at the history of speed?
No.
Yeah. So then we get into like, okay, so where is all this coming from? I thought it was really interesting how he talked about the first thing that really kind of changed things was the sundial. No longer were they just looking up, which when you think about it, it's so cool because, even just the looking up, right? Like, even though God's not necessarily up, right? Like looking up, right? Now they were looking down at something to tell them what to do when. And that only got more, right? So the sundial turned into the Casio watch, turned into now this iPhone that follows us everywhere that we go. And did you guys, oh my gosh, I thought this was so funny. Have you watched the movie? Oh, hold on. I just blanked on it. It's a Disney movie, and I'm not always a huge fan of Disney, but it's the robots. Oh gosh, one of my kids at church was just talking about the other day. Now I'm blanking on it. They're all laying around and super lazy, and everybody gets really fat because they have all these time-saving devices, so nobody has to work anymore. Oh, I'll think of it, just like the Ramsey. Yeah.
A foreshadow.
Yeah. So where does he talk about this? I think it was page 32. He said that the problem was, okay, he talked about somewhere in here that we thought that our biggest problem was going to be that we had too much downtime, that we were going to have all of these like time-saving devices, and now we were just going to be laying around. Wally, that's the name of the movie.
Wally.
We'd be laying around like Wally, right? Just getting fat and, and whatever. And yet that's not been what's happened, right? Like, what have you guys, what's maybe like some time-saving technology that you've experienced? We're all kind of similar stage of life. I'm 2 months away from 50, Kristen. So I'm almost there too. And I know Shayna's not too far off from us as well. What's a time-saving device that you've seen that could have maybe saved us some time, but really has just kind of tended to soak up more of it? Anything come to mind?
The phone.
You think? Yeah.
Well, just really apps in general. Like every app is, not every app, but a lot of apps are there to help save us time. But yet in all reality, they're just time suckers. That's all they are.
Right. If you listen to a recent episode, I talked about the difference between tools and entertainment apps on your phone, and really being able to differentiate what is a tool that I use to help me do something, like my maps that help me get me where I need to go. That would be important to probably keep on your phone, right? Like maybe a messaging app, like my husband only connects on Signal. So if I don't have Signal, I'm not connecting with my husband. So I have Signal. Versus, the ones, and versus the ones like, Netflix and the Candy Crush and whatever. And here's the way you can think about it. If you have a spare minute, the ones that you're going to go to in just a spare minute downtime are probably the entertainment ones. They're probably the mindless, numbing, I'm just filling space, right? You're probably not going to go just like, I mean, some people go hang out in Google Maps, you know, and kind of like, you know, geek out on looking around, but most people are probably not like, oh, I'm in line at the grocery store. I think I'll just play around in Google Maps. So that's how you can tell if it's a tool or if it's entertainment. So use that strategy to kind of start filtering what is on there, right? But yeah, the problem is that we just spent all this time that it saved us on other things, right? Like we get places faster now because we have cars, but that didn't give us more time in our day. It just took us more places and makes us do more things. You know, we have these devices that wash our clothes and wash our dishes. Well, I still don't have a dishwasher yet, but eventually I'll get back there. You know, we have all these things that do stuff for us. And yet, like, where's our time going? Where's all this like saved time, right? That's out there. That was really interesting too. Then when he talks about like the printing press, you know, and that can actually be, you know, in a good way. Like it accessed, like the Gutenberg press got the Bible into the hands of way more people, right? Like now they could like mass produce this and more people could have it, right? So in some ways it's a good thing. And the same thing with our phones. I mean, I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. I'm literally right now working on an episode about 5 apps to download to help you love God more and more and to love his word more and more, right? Like how amazing that we do have a device like this that I can access when I'm in the pickup line or I'm in, you know, the checkout line or wherever I am. And I could, you know, read the word. I can listen to the word. I can, you know, pray for somebody or whatever. Right. So there's both sides of it, you know, but I think it's not the device. It's not the watch. It's not whatever. It's about a heart, right? These are just a tool. What am I doing with this in my hand? Okay. So how did you feel about the statistic on page 36 that the average iPhone user touches his or her phone 2,617 times a day?
I read that to my husband because he's really guilty of that.
I read that to Andy, my COO, who's sitting next to me.
And even if you're just like half of that or a fourth of that, like, right? Go ahead.
Well, there's quite a few pieces in this chapter, and that was one of them that I have actually marked to read to my kids. In fact, there's even a star with "read to my kids" next to this. And that was actually, that's the section that I specifically said, because it was just, I can see it, especially I'm not up to that 2,600. In fact, I just sent my son into the house my oldest son, because he works for me, to find my phone, because I think I took it in when I took the dogs in over an hour ago and I forgot it there. So I'm not at that 2,600. I know that I'm doing a lot, but you know, the kids at dinner, like even like, you know, phones at dinner, and it's just constantly, and like we make fun of our daughter because she's constantly taking pictures for it. Like you play a game, and in between every single hand of hers, she's like, Snapchat. I'm like, quit, just stop, put your phone down, stop. They don't need to see every move that you make. Just stop.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's episode, Shayna, is 5 no phone zones. One of them is the table, but there are a few others in there. So, and I tell the story of my friend and her teenagers, so you'll get a kick out of it. Yeah, but it's crazy. And even like what it says in 37, a similar study found that just being in the same room as our phone, even if it's turned off, will reduce someone's working memory and problem skills. Translation, they're making us dumber just by being in the room. Like,
and I can see that. Like, because all it takes is me, like, for instance, I was reading this book this morning, and I read all 51 pages because I wanted to read that little addition part that told how and why he started reading this book. And like 5 pages in, I'm thinking, oh, I need to check on this. Or my phone is constantly buzzing because work has already started here in the office. And so it's constantly, so I'd have to tap it, see what it is. And then I go back to reading, and then I tap it and see what the next one is. And it's like, so I'm actually thinking about, like, I think that I may actually just take off my iWatch and just, like, I've already been, and we've discussed this in the past about turning off notifications. Like there's some notifications I need to know, you know, when my husband texts me or my kids text me, but I don't need to know every single time someone puts a thing on Instagram, because I don't even open up Instagram. Like I have like 2 pictures on there. I don't need to know on my phone when someone has tagged me in a Facebook comment. I can see that later. So I think I'm really going to start really truly narrowing down that. And been taken off and if I do that, I'm probably gonna have to turn the volume on my phone just so I can know when my kids need me or my husband needs me, because he typically
It
needs me
won't.
and wants me right now.
Well,
But
Mhm.
it'll still be way
for
less.
him too.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, I actually
Yeah,
addressed
I find
the watch too, because you're right. It keeps your notifications right there, even if your phone isn't with you. And just what's that doing? And not in a judgment way, but just thinking about, yeah, how does it feel to be notified 24/7 when something's happened on your phone? Go ahead, Kristen.
yeah. No, I was just saying that I had I don't know how long, it's been a while now. I did a productivity program a long time ago, and the girl actually had you organize your phone and actually organize the apps and that sort of thing. And so I think it was at that point that I turned all my apps off, like the notifications off. So the only notifications, Shayna, is that I get our texts, and I have my volume off all of the time. So even if someone was to call my phone, my mom even complains that to my daughter. She's like, "Your mom never answers her phone," and I'm like, I unless I know the number, I don't answer, because usually it's someone selling you something. But
Sure.
so I have no notifications, and then I saw my husband's phone. Oh my gosh, and his phone's sitting there, and I'm like, Roger, like, you have way too many notifications. Like, it's just, and it actually creates stress.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
it
getting
does.
all of
Yeah.
Telegram from this. I'm like, turn them off. All you need to go in the setting and turn them. I'm a
I've had
bossy that way.
I've had twice today. My husband has walked and said, "Did you see my text message?" And I'm like, "Well, since I didn't respond, you know I didn't see your text." I said this to him the second. I'm like, "You know I didn't see your text message." And he just stares at me. So like he's still not gonna tell me. I have to go read this text message.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
some people though, they see it as and my husband and his sister are both this way. They need that approval from people. They need to know that people think of them, and it is all those notifications
Mhm.
are and the posting of the pictures of themselves, or like it's all about bringing attention to themselves because they feel like they need it. And I feel like society has taught us to do that, and that's why most of our kids do it. They do it for approval. um so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
And
scary thing.
this is why
It
we
is.
have to ruthlessly eliminate, right? Because the society around us, the culture around us is only pushing more and more and more, right? And again, I keep saying this over and over again in our series. If you've been listening to the Redeem Your Phone Time series, this is not about flushing your toilet or flushing your phone down the toilet or throwing it out the window, right? Like we can use it well. There are purposeful, good things, right, that we need to do with it, because we just live in this age where, we do need to communicate and things like that. And yet it's really, like you said, it's a heart issue, right? Where am I finding my value? Where am I finding my significance? Where am I, finding my validation? Where does that come from? And most of the time when it's coming from our phone, it's not in a healthy way. There are ways to do it, right? Like I said, I'm working on that, but it's all built for addiction, right? And this definition on page 40 was really just like eye-opening, right? Addiction is the relentless pull to a substance or an activity that becomes so compulsive it ultimately interferes with everyday life. And he goes, by that definition, nearly everyone I know is addicted in some measure to the internet. Right. And
Yeah.
even
I would
before
agree.
of this, right? Like there's always been something, right? There's always been something taking our attention away from God. I think that's the whole point. For us, it happens to be technology and this phone that we can carry in our pockets. But people struggled with this 50 years ago before we had this. People struggled with this 100 years ago. The Israelites struggled with this when they had nothing but God, right? Like you'd think like, hello, you just watched him part the Red Sea. He just told you he's going to give you water. Like literally I was reading this morning in Numbers. He just promised them he was going to give them water, and he gave it to them. And then literally they turn around and start complaining about the fact that they don't have enough food and water. I'm like, and he also told them, I'm taking you to the promised land. So that means he's not going to let you die, right? Because he can't do that if he doesn't give you the food and water and then lets you die in the wilderness, right? But we do, we just get it's like, it doesn't matter. It's a heart condition issue. It's not what form of technology, do I have? And thankfully at this point, it's not like implanted in our bodies, but it's probably only moving towards something like that, where it's just going to get smaller and smaller and more, a part of something that we really have to push against to get away from. So
They know.
yeah. And just really, what is this doing, right? And what really struck me, so there's not even a page number on this, but the first page of the section that's called "Something is Deeply Wrong." I love this story. An English traveler lands in Africa, intent on a rapid journey into the jungle. He charters some local porters to carry his supplies. After an exhausting day of travel, all on foot, and a fitful night's sleep, he gets up to continue the journey. But the porters refuse. Exasperated, he begins to cajole, bribe, plead, but nothing works. They will not move an inch. So naturally, he asks why. The answer? They are waiting for their souls to catch up with their bodies. When is the last time that we actually waited and let our souls catch up with our bodies? Or just kept them together, right? I don't want to always be in that rubber band of like, okay, and I'm stopping now to catch up, and then I rush on again, and then I, have to do my catch up and then rush on. But like really living at a pace. Jesus never ran. I think he talked about that in here, right? Like Jesus never ran. He walked everywhere he went. He didn't take a bus. He didn't try to get somewhere faster, right? It was just like that. And like, if you notice in the Bible, and I can't remember if this was in here, if it was this other book I'm reading, it does not say like ever talk about our run with God, right? It talks about our walk with God, right? And like, it's just sometimes this slow thing that we're going. Let's look real quick at these symptoms. I think these are really good that you referred to earlier, Shayna, starting page 48. And what might be good is not kind of doing an all or nothing, but kind of evaluating yourself like on a 0 to 5, right? Because I think in all these areas, we're going to be on the radar somewhere, right? Like, I don't think, our goal is to ruthlessly eliminate all of these, right? So yes, we're going towards that, but knowing our human nature, we probably will have, a little bit of some of these, but this is a great way to kind of go through and say, and where am I on the scale? And what I love is even if we're at a 4 or a 4.9, we always have, room to grow, right? But we can feel really good that it's really about the progress we've made. So the first one, irritability, little things just bothering you. Like, we live in the country, so our internet is not super fast. And guess what? That is really annoying when my internet is lagging or when it's dropping in the call like this, like we have had at the beginning, right? But like, seriously, that's because I'm in a hurry. Hypersensitivity, kind of another similar thing. Minor things quickly escalating to major emotional events. Anyone experience this? I starred this next one. So there's a star in my book next to this next one. Restlessness, when you actually try to slow down and rest, you can't relax. Almost like we don't know how to just be, like, without doing. And I know for me, you talked about this, Kristen, earlier, like for me, it was running from some things in my life, right? And so it's easier to keep busy and keep them at like arm's distance. So I didn't have to deal with them. I didn't have to think about them. It's just easier to be busy over here. I even had a situation happen a couple of weeks ago where something had happened with a friend. And my response was to busy myself in the kitchen. And my other friends were all sitting in the living room. They're like, Lissa, come here. I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm going to get lunch ready. They're like, we're not hungry. Come here. Like, they made me come sit down. And as soon as I sat down, I started bawling, right, about what had happened. And they were all there, so they had seen it and they all knew the situation and whatever. And, but I just wanted to busy myself to keep from having to think about it. Workaholism, or just nonstop activity. You don't know when to stop or can't stop. All of us own businesses. Anybody struggle with when to close your laptop and not go back to it? When to not check email or messenger or whatever one more time?
Yeah.
Emotional numbness. Wow. Empathy being a rare feeling for you because you don't have time for it. Out of order priorities. Your life is reactive, not proactive. Lack of care for your body. You don't have time for the basics. Escaping something, right? Like, how many hours do we give to mindless things like Netflix and social media and surfing and all kinds of things like that? Slippage of spiritual discipline. So there's kind of maybe I'm not praying as much as I was or would kind of the going to other things first. And isolation, feeling disconnected from God, others, and your soul. I started several of them. Are there any ones of those that you feel like, this is one that God's really just kind of going, sit up and pay attention to this one right now, like in this season of your life?
I'd say restlessness.
Okay.
Like, for me, reading the word. I never used to be like this. It's interesting. And, I can read, I like Lisa Turker's books, or is the Bevere, her books, like those books where they're scripture based. Mm-hmm. But when then I go into the word, it's like it says here, and it's so bad to say, but you read the scripture, but you find it boring. Like, I know it's not boring. And it's my mind is like, like just all over the place. And I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how did this happen? I don't even know how it happened. And
Yeah.
so, obviously God knows everything. So I don't have to hide anything from him. But yeah, like I would say the restlessness. And and you know what? Restlessness with even where I feel like, how I said earlier, where I feel like we should be. Because for years, this is not just a new thing. This has been a long, long time. And it's like interesting. Like, take me back 10 years and I probably said the same thing.
Right.
And here I am later. And it's like, it's still the same thing. So it's like, okay, well, now ask yourself, why is it still the same thing? So I would say probably that one. I don't toss and turn at bed. I do, like, when number 7, I mean, that's the area I teach. So I'm very on point with that. But the restlessness of, all that is definitely probably, the biggest one, I would say.
Good thing to be noticing. Go ahead, Shanna.
Yeah, I'd say my biggest, and I know that you know this, is the out of order priorities. That would be my biggest. And then God's really been working on me with the spiritual disciplines too. So, but I just started a discipleship class with church, and I know that that's like 100% going to help me that. But the out of order priorities for sure is, it's always truly kicked my butt, which is what causes anything else. It is the cause of the irritability or the hypersensitivity or the restlessness, emotional, like it's what causes all of that, or needing to work longer because I've got my priorities out of order. And so it takes me longer to do everything. So it's the root of all my evil.
Yeah. Good noticing, right? Because, and he talks about this in 54, attention leads to awareness, right? Like, if we're not paying attention to these things, if we're not aware of how we're feeling, where we're at, where our time is going, that kind of thing, like, you can't do anything about it, right? Because you're not even aware of it. So I think that's what their first step is. And, definitely, if you have not already dog-eared or put your little Post-it notes on those 10 things, like, definitely mark that section. I think this is a good one to come back to on a somewhat regular basis, right? Of just saying, how am I doing in these areas? What of these is kind of creeping back in again? And the more often we check in, the easier then we don't get as far, right, from where we want, from the center. And then the easier it's going to be to come back. Rather, if we let it go for, months or years, or whatever, then it's going to be a whole lot more work to get us back there. So just keep being aware, keep noticing, and then take it to the Lord. Like, Lord, I'm noticing this. I'm feeling this, like, what do you want to say to me in this? Right. And ask him in that, and then be faithful and being obedient to what he tells you to do or not do. Right. Because that's the thing. We can be aware and we can ask, but then it's that doing part, right? That sometimes is where we kind of like, I don't know if it's really that important, So, but Shana, you really just hit on what I wanted to end with today. And it's the quote on page 55, kind of down near the bottom of my copy. It says, I love how John Ortberg framed it. Hurry is not just a disordered schedule. Hurry is a disordered heart. Yeah, it's that, like you were talking about, it's the disordered priorities, right? Yeah, we can sit down and create this amazing, schedule. And that is so important, right, to do that. But the reason, like in the program I'm building, that we don't start with your calendar, we start with your heart first. We start with, what is God calling you to in these 8 areas of your life, right? And then we look at your calendar and say, okay, and where do we put this so that you actually give time to it, right? And so getting things in the right order is so interesting, right? It's not a calendar problem. It's a heart problem. Just like our phone issue is not a phone issue, it's a heart issue, right? And so just like, I think, like, as you read this book, he just, it's easy to read. Hopefully you saw that. Like, it's not like, I mean, a lot of great information that kind of blows your brain, but it's also very practical and very down to earth and very like, okay, yeah, right. And just like, let those things just kind of sink in, right? And come back to them. And okay, do I have a disordered heart? I'm feeling hurried right now. What's out of order? Not looking at your calendar, but looking at your heart, right? And like asking those questions. And I love then how he quoted Jesus then at the end on page 56. He says, cue the haunting line from Jesus of Nazareth. Not haunting in a bad way, haunting in a, it gets in us and we know this is exactly what we need to hear. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, to have everything in their business, to have everything in their life, to have everything in their health, to have everything in their finances, in their relationships, in their social media likes and follows, in podcast downloads, whatever, right? Like, what good is all of that if you gained all that yet forfeit your soul? Right? Because as we talked about today, hurry is disconnecting our soul from God. So the good news is that we are not going to stay there, but it's going to have to wait until our next time we get together for us to talk about it. So, you know, so we will get into the part 2, the solution, for our next time, which is on 3/13. I can't believe that March is like literally 2 days away if you're listening to this in real time. What just happened? Yeah, so we'll be back here on the 13th, and we always record these. So for some reason you can't be on live, we will always do that. Two other quick announcements I just want to share while we're here. One is usually we do our start focus calls on the first Monday of the month. I am going to be driving back from Florida, not by myself, and I have no idea where we're going to be at that time. So we're going to do it on Tuesday the 7th. So mark your calendar. It's in the event. So if you RSVP'd, it's correct in there. It is Tuesday, March 7th at 6 p.m. And that's a combination of us kind of talking about like getting some focus for our hearts as we look ahead to the month, as well as looking at our calendar, right? So it's a little bit of both. So I ask you to bring your calendar with you, bring something to write with. We're going to go through the focused system that I've created that you can download just to help us think through what are my priorities, right? So we can get those things in the right order and make sure that they have a place in our calendar to live. So that's going to be on the 7th. And also you may have seen, I've been talking about these schedule shaping strategy sessions where we do, in that one, we're kind of like jumping into the calendar piece. But it's because it's a quick win for you to be able to kind of go, what are some things I've been saying are important, but I haven't been making time for? I keep putting it off. It's not happening, right? Those kinds of things that always feel hurried and rushed maybe. And so what we do in that 1 hour session is look at where's your time been going? Where do you really want it to go? What's God calling you to, right? What do you want to see change about this? And then I teach you a time blocking system that I've created that starts with you being with God first and ends with you being with God. And then in the middle is when you pour out, because you can't pour if you have an empty cup, right? But what do? We hurry, 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 and we do it in our own strength, and we wonder why we're exhausted and frustrated and things like that. So those, just so you guys know, are only available through the month of March, and then they are going to be going away because then the program will be coming out. So if that's of interest to you, you can reach out to me and I will give you the link to sign up for one of those before we go. So before we go, because we're right at the top of the hour here, what is a takeaway that you have from either something you read or something we talked about today? And if you're listening to the replay, I'm going to encourage you to do this, and then you can put it down in the comments. What's something you want to take away with you?
Definitely setting aside more time to not do anything.
Mm. And do you remember what he told us in the One Thing book? You have to block your not work time first, your time off. If you remember, he took us through 3 steps. The first one was block your time off first, because if you don't, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
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 We'll fill with something, right? Kristen, what's your biggest takeaway from this so far?
Gosh, I mean, a lot of it was like I'm going to say a lot of it was confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
It was confirmation. Like, I mean, the things I'm just looking at here, the things that I've underlined, like, yeah, like I'm going to say it's because there's so many things here. I'm going to basically, well, the number one, the big thing was about the phone, how much we actually, we kind of already know that, but when you think, because people have it attached to us, but when you think about how many times, like how many thousands of times, that was like, okay, like it was more than I thought. But yeah, like looking at what I've underlined here, again, I'm going to say, like with the restlessness, when I look at these symptoms, like I know that. So again, it's just God's continuing to remind me of what I've kind of known for a long time. And yeah. And then I wrote here, hurry has disconnected our soul to God. So and that hurry is a disordered heart, that it's not really about, the schedule and yeah. yeah, it's hard. Never really thought of it that way, but it always is, right? So, yeah.
And yet it shows up in the tangible, practical ways of my calendar and my phone and things like that too, right? So to remembering these things are just a reflection of what's going on inside. And I hope that if you guys have been following with the series, started in 105, episode 105, you know, we've been talking about heart and tactical things to do with your phone. We've been going back and forth between both of them. So look at that. There, you also inside the group can grab the free Redeem for Phone Time Challenge guide, which walks you through some of these things. So if the phone is one place you're feeling like this is sucking some time and probably, you know, adding more hurry to my life than I want it to, download that guide and start going through that. And then everything we're doing on the podcast and inside the community is all connected to that up through Easter. So come join the conversation. So yeah, and invite other people to join us. We are not the only hurried people on the planet, ladies. Like, let's be honest. The reason that, you know, we have a small group here live, and this is not any judgment to those of you who are watching a replay, is because we live hurried lives, right? Because we are so busy. So, you know, let that be a sign of, oh, I wish I could go. Well, okay, what can you do about it, right? So let's share with others too. All right, thanks, ladies.
Awesome.
Have a great
Thank
rest of your
you.
day. Be thinking about you as we do the next section. Bye-bye.
Awesome.